things, but welcome everyone to this month's Impact Innovation Lab event. For those who don't know me, my name is Carissa and I'm the Innovation Coordinator here at Impact Innovation in Brisbane. I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands we meet on today. For me here in Meanjin, the Turrbal and Yagara people, we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to acknowledge any First Nations people with us here today. So Impact Innovations Lab series is about bringing innovation managers together to dig into specific topics and learn from others in the field. At Impact Innovation, we're all about building a higher standard of innovation and commercialization practice and building professionalism in the field of innovation. And what better way to do this than to bring you all together in this forum here today. For those of you who don't know us, Impact Innovation is an end-to-end innovation and commercialization consultancy. We specialize in innovation and commercialization strategy and design through to implementation and deployment. We work with all industries and sectors across the Asia Pacific, and we help our clients take their best ideas and apply the best course of action. Today's session is all about teams and skills, the people who power innovation. We'll hear from a great panel of guest speakers and we'll be asking them some of your burning questions that you submitted in the registration form. Thanks everyone who submitted those questions. We'll try to get through as many of them as possible in today's session. So let's bring in our panel now. Our first speaker is Janine Berry. She's the Innovation Manager, People and Culture at JBS. She has more than 20 years experience as a manager and consultant, facilitating organizational strategy, workplace design, and business improvement. Janine is passionate about viewing every role and activity within an organization as part of a bigger whole and about exploring business improvement opportunities from the perspective of the employee and the customer. So welcome, Janine. Our second guest speaker today is Kathryn Robinson, the Innovation Program Lead at UnityWater. She collaborates with internal stakeholders, industry leaders, and global research partners to uncover opportunities that could transform the status quo. Through her work in multinational companies, she has advised clients on end-to-end innovation processes, coached individuals, and facilitated workshops designed to build skills in creativity and innovation. Welcome, Kathryn. Our last speaker is Brian Ruddle. Brian is Impact Innovation's Managing Partner, having established the company back in 2006. He has a diverse background that includes establishment of innovation systems, deployment of commercialization strategy for new technologies, management of startup companies, and strategic planning for international development projects. Brian is also the chair of the Innovation Standards Committee for Standards Australia and represents Australia in the development of the ISO Innovation Standards. Welcome, Brian. So I'll kick things off with a couple of questions for our panelists today. So Janine, let's start with you. First up, can you tell us about innovation at JBS Australia and what does it look like?
Thanks, Carissa. Hi, everybody. So innovation in JBS Australia. Just quickly, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with JBS. It's sort of one of those companies that seems to be not overly well known, but we're actually the largest food producer in the world. Nestle used to be, we knocked them off the perch not that long ago. And we're also Australia's largest food and largest meat producer in JBS Australia. We own product companies like Primo. We have major beef and lamb and pig processing facilities, and we also own more recently Huon's Salmon Farm. And we actually also have a technology company as well that we have major shares in. So JBS is a very, very diverse company, but primarily an agricultural company. And I guess it's that agricultural background that defines what innovation currently looks like in JBS. I'm sure some of you are aware, but maybe not those who don't work in the agricultural sector. We've got a pretty cool model in Australia, which is legislated by the federal government, whereby companies and producers pay levies to, as part of their process, and a certain proportion of those levies are then used for R&D and innovation activities. So that means within JBS Australia, we've constantly got a steady stream of projects, innovation projects, and they're thankfully funded through these levies that we pay on a regular basis. So I guess at the moment that means that innovation in JBS it's primarily projects, lots and lots of projects, but we are on a bit of a journey at the moment to actually move beyond projects and have a more of a systems and strategic approach to innovation in general.
Awesome, thanks Janine. Another question for you, because today is all around skills. I'd love to hear how your career journey led you to this role in innovation management.
Yeah, it's been a perfect course in a way. My background prior to the last 10 years was primarily with public sector and large public sector, and I did a lot of work in business process improvement and strategic management, strategic planning, and including strategic HR. I then left the public sector and started my own business and worked for about 10 years as an independent consultant, again, primarily with public sector, doing similar things. So I guess business improvement is really about constantly finding new ways of doing things. And that often included developing new products for the community members and things like that, and new processes, and totally turning businesses on its head. So that whole background in terms of analytics and review and identifying new ways fit really well with an innovation manager role. And then also my background in strategic planning and strategic management really helped me in this role, which is much more about trying to understand what do we need to look like across the whole organisation in terms of a system to have a sustained, embedded approach to innovation moving forward.
Awesome. Another one for you, Janine, in terms of roles and skills, tell me about the innovation team at JBS Australia. What roles do you have leading innovation, and what sort of skills does the team have?
Yep. You've got to remember the size of JBS. We've got about 14,000 people at any one time in Australia alone. So, and we're made up primarily of business units. So it's a big organisation, but lots of business units. And what has happened, I suppose, over the last sort of 6 years in particular, is a lot of those funds that we can access to support innovation have gone towards funding dedicated innovation manager roles. For example, my role is innovation manager, people and culture. I'm actually funded by the Australian Meat Processing Corporation for a 3-year period to drive innovation relating to people and culture in JBS. I'm also tasked with helping set up the strategic management approach to innovation in the organisation. But we've got about 6 or 8 innovation managers across JBS who all tend to focus at different portfolios. Like we've got an innovation manager, sustainability, an innovation manager, value-added processing, things like that. So we've got a group of us who are focused on generating innovation projects and initiatives related to specific projects. And we try to work collaboratively as well as we can. We're also in the process of working out what roles do we need beside those dedicated roles to support ongoing processes and systems moving forward. For example, we had an advisory committee that we're now calling a steering committee for innovation, and that group will actually oversee the prioritisation of innovation projects and make sure that we're innovating on the things that matter to the organisation, and that we're not that the monies are being best put to use, I suppose. So in terms of skills, I guess in the past there has been quite a bit of focus, and AMPC has delivered and facilitated training around things like design thinking and your traditional innovation skills associated with coming up with new ideas, testing new ideas, piloting and implementing, and so on. But we're also trying to take a much broader look at innovation skills. And Carissa, I might get you to, there's a slide, if you wouldn't mind showing that now, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I guess the reason why I wanted to show this is typically from the research that I've done and in my experience, there's a lot of emphasis placed by organisations on the delivering innovation. There's a lot of talk about design thinking, design heuristics, then going through your analysis and your evaluation and so on. But I guess what we're really trying to position in the organisation is that's just one part of innovation. That's actually about project delivery. There are actually a lot of other skills that we need if we're going to be an innovative organisation as well. For example, we need some very clear skills related to leading innovation. That means things like having a good understanding of our market and external trends affecting our business. We need our managers and leaders to actually be thinking about strategic alignment. They need to be sponsoring and championing innovation activities and so on. And then the bottom section is basically, regardless of whether you're in an innovation role or not, this is saying that if we're going to be an innovative organisation, ideally all of our people will have certain skill sets, such as awareness, so being familiar with emerging tech, understanding of our sustainability goals and people challenges, that we've got people who are continuous learning is very, very important, constantly learning new things, good teamwork and collaboration, good problem solving. I guess this comes back to really, we're operating in, and I'm sure many people have heard the term VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous. And that's just the reality in which we operate nowadays. And innovation is probably our best bet in helping navigate change in that VUCA world. So it's about equipping all employees with skills to help them navigate in a VUCA world, and therefore to support innovation. Hope that makes sense.
Awesome. Thanks, Janine. That's a great overview that you've sent through to us. Thank you. Last question for you, Janine. In terms of roles and skills, what's most critical at JBS?
We're actually going through a process of determining that at the moment. The intention is with that chart that I just showed, that we will go through an exercise of identifying, of looking at performance and importance of those skill sets. But my personal view really, oh goodness, where do you start? I actually think though it's really about having a sense of curiosity and the ability to problem solve. And if nothing else, if we had a workforce who had that mindset of, I could do this better, how could I do that differently, then we would by default have innovation. So I don't think that's the only skill we need, but I think for me, that's probably at the crux. And for me, then the next most important would probably be collaboration, sharing the innovations, sharing our success stories, sharing our learnings. That's vital for being innovative efficiently.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Janine. We're going to switch over to Kathryn now. So Kathryn, could you tell us a little bit about innovation at UnityWater and what does it look like?
Absolutely. So thanks for having me, everyone. In terms of UnityWater, I'll just fill you in a little bit about who we are and what we do. So we're a water utility. We supply water and sewage treatment services to the Moreton Bay, Sunshine Coast, and Noosa regions of the beautiful part of Southeast Queensland where we're privileged to call home. We're owned by these 3 council areas as well. So we're a government subsidiary. We service over 350,000 homes and businesses. That's about 16% of the Queensland population. And we work in one of the fastest growing regions in Australia. So certainly a big component of our current business is based around the very fast growth that's happening. And we employ around 750 people in 4 different offices across our service area. So just to give you an idea of the size of our business, especially in relation to JBS, so quite a smaller business. The innovation function sits under the people, culture, and safety business unit, with, of course, people and culture being such an important part of running a successful innovation program. So we sit under well-being and continuous improvement as part of the continuous improvement team. So there's actually 4 functions under that team that work independently, but of course are closely linked. We've got a quality analyst team member process. We've got 2 continuous improvement analysts, and we've got innovation as a function. So I'm the team member who's responsible for running the innovation program across the business, and really focusing on those disruptive or even radical opportunities that could really provide some measurable advancements towards our goals, especially in terms of sustainability and our net zero commitments. So we've had an innovation program at UnityWater for going on 7 years now, and almost that entire time we've worked really closely with Impact Innovation Group as an advisor, and to help us navigate through our journey.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathryn. Yeah, I think UnityWater is our longest client. So we're very lucky to have you as a client and here today as well. So next question for you, Kathryn. Could you tell us now about your career journey and how that led you to this role in innovation management at UnityWater?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always been a bit of a lover of being in a bit of an uncomfortable position in terms of my career journey. So I put myself through uni by running different businesses. One of them being running a painting business, and I had staff, and that was a whole thing, trying to figure out how to navigate through that while also being away at uni, but great fun and lots of innovative thinking and teamwork that came into play on that. And then once I received my business degree, I started working for Yellow Media Inc., or what we were rebranded as. So that was back in 2006, 2007, just as the first iPhone was coming out. We were starting a national transition from being a heavily print or company that provided a free service that was paid for based on purchasing of advertising by local businesses, and really made that big transition from being a monopoly in a national organization to being now a bit of a smaller fish in a much bigger pond, with all of the digital technology and sort of that was just becoming available, including, getting small and medium-sized businesses their own first websites and that sort of thing, having very early days of online promotion and transitioning through that. So that involved a lot of innovative thinking and leadership as well, for just really figuring out how to navigate through that and what our new product offering might be to help our small and medium-sized advertisers that relied on us for acquiring such a big part of their business. So we often were working with new concepts. So there was, probably we're familiar with Groupon, but that was something that that concept of group buying and promoting a specific hot deal in a short time frame. So we had launched a similar platform for that type of thing, and that type of thinking is really what led me to where I am today, in terms of just having that approach to that design thinking in terms of empathizing what is required and what the possibilities could be, but then also training a new way of thinking from a consumer perspective as well on this new concept in being able to reach people to buy from, whether they're locally or globally. So just sort of being part of that, those new emerging possibilities has really been a big contributor to bringing me where I am today.
Awesome. Next question for you. How is innovation spread across the organization, and where does it sit? And how do you build innovation capabilities?
Great question. And a few layers to that one, I think. So I was mentioning we've had an innovation program at UnityWater for going on 7 years now, and definitely the program has ebbed and flowed in its areas of focus and in its successes over those years. So, we've done a bit of a check-in recently, and we have found that we do have a lot of healthy pockets of innovation that are happening all around the place. So, and we're really proud as an organization that we do have people that are feeling like they're in a position to be enabled to try different things of getting their job done in the most efficient and cost-effective and ways possible. So I think it's a real privilege to be working for an organization that does support innovation in the way that we do. And I think it's a privilege to receive people's ideas as well, for people to come forward with their innovative thoughts and ways of doing things, suggestions, because I think that's really a symptom of a healthy, innovative culture. So we do want to continue, and of course, to be supporting that type of thinking and action within those pockets of innovation around the place. And we celebrate that whenever we can by really telling those stories and honoring the innovations that are happening by communicating about them. But yeah, in terms of innovation as a function, we're really now, and I think Janine mentioned as well at JBS that there's like sustainability innovation, and there's those more focused areas for innovation programs. And that's definitely what we're doing as an organization. We're really focusing now on what specific areas do we want to uncover and really mine for those gold nuggets of innovation that are going to bring us forward and support our business model and get us achieving our strategy and those net zero sustainability goals and so on. I think in terms of building capabilities, it's easy to say, but I think there's a lot that can be said for providing the time and space to think and read, to be connected to the world outside of your 9 to 5 and outside of just sort of what you're doing in your daily job. I think building those capabilities is within an organization is about finding those enablers as well, those people who have that passion outside of their 9 to 5 to build those capabilities in their own time as well. The people that are passionate to participate, those that don't mind asking those really out there questions. We were working on a project recently having to do with powering a rotating piece of equipment and sewage treatment plant equipment. We were joking about bringing in circus ponies to like walk around safely and but really just having a laugh about, you know, how could we possibly do this? Let's just sort of break that barrier and create that environment where we can have a bit of a laugh and make those ridiculous suggestions. But sometimes the best ideas come from the most crazy starting points. So really providing an environment where it is encouraged to provide the time and space to think and read, but also to provide that safe environment for people to allow their minds to think about all of the possibilities to solve that problem or achieve that goal.
Yeah, awesome. And I like that idea about the circus ponies.
It was definitely good for a laugh, bit of non-regulated revenues.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know.
Oh, wonderful. The last question for you, Kathryn, is in terms of roles and skills, what's most critical at UnityWater?
I think collaboration is just, you just can't go past it. There's just the biggest possibilities can come from people putting their minds together. So I just think, yeah, processes are important. It's important that we have a governance around this into a certain respect, so that we're making sure that we're hearing all ideas and we're not limited by our own thoughts and knowledge on where these ideas could potentially take us. But I think collaboration, having those conversations, finding that inspiration from others in the business as well as in the industry. I think the water industry, especially in Australia and really globally, does an awesome job of keeping people in touch with one another, providing outlets for people to have those conversations and just bounce ideas around and talk about what the possibilities could be, and if we could build this in exactly the way that we want it to, what would that look like? So really providing that that collaboration and that time and space to really think big.
Yeah, awesome. So we're going to switch gears a little bit here. So we asked the question to all of our attendees today: what's most critical to innovation at your organization? And we've summarized the responses into this word cloud that you see on the screen now. The top 3 most critical skills were that were highlighted from this group with us today was data and insight analysis, innovation management, and of course collaboration, as Janine and Kathryn have touched on. So we're going to bring in Brian here. What are your thoughts on these results?
Yeah, no, they're always interesting when we get the survey results coming through. And hi, everyone, by the way, before I just jump straight in. But yeah, it's always interesting to sort of see, I suppose, where some of the challenges are that everyone sort of is facing. And every innovation system, it sort of depends on, I suppose, where they've been focusing, I suppose, what they've been doing. So, for example, some that probably really focus in on collaboration or may have collaboration pretty well sorted in terms of a gap, if you like. But, look, I think all of those sort of, particularly those top 3 make a lot of sense in terms of where people are focusing. Just touching on the data and insights one in particular, one of the challenges, and look, there's a lot of organizations do a lot of training of staff, and it's about ideation and coming up with ideas and how to engage with the system and all of that sort of stuff. But it's often, also really important to, give people skills about, looking for those opportunities and how to actually interpret those opportunities. And, just picking up on Janine's point, we've had this conversation before too, Janine, your vision around, even staff that are, say, within a meatworks environment or something like that, being aware of technologies that are available and being aware of stuff that's going on externally, and how, if they're aware of some of those things, then they're starting to see, okay, we've got this problem, but actually there's this bit of tech that if we did this, this, and this together, that could solve it. And so I think, and I've had debates around this, can that be taught? And we're all different, and I get that, but I think part of it is actually giving people the insight as to how those aha moments come about. There's a lot of, if you like, manufactured workshops to create ideas, whereas I think a lot of the most interesting ones come from more of the, happen to be walking along the street and you see a sign and all of a sudden you click 3 things together. And sort of, I think having more of those conversations, as well as the others, I'm not saying, more formalized ideation type approaches don't work, but I think having more of that, looking at data, insights, and being able to then work out what to do with them is really, really important. The other one, and just picking up on collaboration, because Kathryn, was talking about collaboration, and I tend to agree that collaboration is a really key thing, and it's often around how to allow people to bounce ideas, and that's a term we use a lot as well. Kathryn, it's just the bouncing of ideas, because often it's just saying, hey, look, I've had a thought bubble. What about this? And someone say, yeah, but if you did this, and then you start bouncing, and then all of a sudden, that's when things start to be, okay, well, this could be a concept worth exploring a little bit more. But it does take a bit of time, particularly with the work environment that we've got at the moment, where, there's a lot of remote work still happening, like how to actually get those bouncing sort of water cooler-esque type things happening is a lot more difficult. But I think, giving people permission, explaining how collaboration works as well. I think, we were running a collaboration program for Trade and Investment Queensland, at the height of the pandemic to sort of help connect with overseas supply chains and the like, and, others within Australia and Queensland. But just to explain how collaboration works often is a really another great thing that we've seen, because this word keeps getting, it's like the innovation word, thrown around everywhere, collaboration thrown around everywhere. But when you break it down, it's about having conversations. It's about, when we talk about business to business collaboration, we talk about sharing resources. And even within organizations, you're sharing your time and your insights and your knowledge with someone else. And sometimes breaking that stuff down just makes it easier for people to understand that they're already probably doing it, but they could do it more. And sometimes just thinking a bit more about, well, what that value is, coming back to that earlier point about, recognizing when there's an aha moment and how to feed it into the system is another really important thing. So, sorry, I probably went off, off the reservation there a bit, Carissa, but it was just really interesting hearing both Janine and Kathryn, but then sort of seeing, a lot of these points. I know I've only just touched on a couple, but yeah, they're all really interesting.
Yeah.
Can I just pipe in, Carissa, too?
Of course.
I think sort of what comes up for me quite a bit, and I think Brian's alluded to it too, is we're talking about skills, obviously, today, but skills and attributes often tend to go hand in hand. So I tend to sort of put them in the same bucket quite often. So you might not always be able to develop attributes, but you can do things to create attributes. And those attributes might be, as Brian was saying, about having a workforce that is quite literate in terms of latest technologies and so on. We can do that through providing them with information and newsletters and showcasing and demonstrating. So so not just skills, but attributes, I think, in this space are equally as important.
Awesome. So I was going to ask you, Janine, next, what were your thoughts on this diagram? So if you wanted to touch on those a little bit more.
Yeah, look, I'm pleasantly surprised. I didn't quite realize. I've come to the conclusion that collaboration is absolutely vital too. The more you learn from each other, the more different ways you can see things. And I guess a big thing that comes through collaboration quite often is a lot of the greatest ideas often come through convergence of different ideas. And that comes through collaboration quite often too. I was lucky enough to spend most of last week, well, sort of lucky, I came home with COVID, but spent most of last week at an innovation showcase in Melbourne. And it was facilitated by the Australian Meat Processing Corporation. I think there were about 400 people there. But what it was 3 days of panel discussions, guest speakers, and then all around the edges of the room were stalls or booths showing all different sorts of technology. There was one of those robotic dogs, I should know what it's called, wandering around the place. There were robots everywhere. There was it's sort of artificial intelligence type modeling going on. And it's that sort of collaborative environment that really stimulates creative juices flowing. It really encourages people to work together and partner. And it was, it was a really, really good event. And I think we'll be looking to host similar sorts of things ourselves. It's about It's about using mechanisms to keep the bubble and the enthusiasm alive.
Yeah, awesome. Kathryn, any thoughts on the word cloud on the screen there?
Yeah, well, I've already put in my 2 cents on my love of collaboration. I think communication and telling the stories is a big part of it as well. But yeah, I think, like, when I think about collaboration, and just going off of what Janine said as well, just being in a room with people who have a similar mindset, and I mean in a room physically,
Yes.
and being exposed to things that inspire, and it won't be the same for everybody. You find the bits and pieces that really speak out to you as an individual, but I think being physically around people like that makes a big difference in just having that mindset and promoting that innovation, whether it's relevant to you in your daily roles or whether it's not. I think just having that inspiration can be such a great source of instigating change through innovation.
Yeah, awesome. Well said. So now we're going to throw it over to our innovation strategist, Chris Stevenson, who'll ask some questions from the audience.
Thank you, Carissa. Hi, everyone. Brian, did you want to?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm going off script again. Apologies,
Right.
Chris. But I just wanted to quickly touch on the idea implementation one on the screen. And the reason for raising it is just because of probably conversations I've had the last 2 days, and literally about an hour ago with the last one. One of the things that's been coming up a fair bit, and I take Janine's point before about the range of skills required, and that there is a lot of focus on the implementation, but one of the things that we're seeing is challenges with transformational implementation of projects rather than incremental. Just putting that on the table, and I suppose the difference between it is decision making within the organisations. So most organisations and most senior managers and leaders are pretty comfortable making decisions when they've got really good factual information. 90 to 95% factual information, and so making decisions around incremental changes within the business or incremental opportunities is actually quite easy for them. And what we've been seeing is that a lot of data collection or validation projects for more transformational are trying to take the same approach, and doing things like a value proposition canvas, or they're doing this or they're doing that, which all makes a lot of sense and all adds value, but it doesn't actually give that degree of confidence to make a decision. And so it's just something I just thought I'd just throw into the mix a little bit, is that the design of some of these validation projects, particularly when there's a lot more unknowns, is something that we're starting to see come through. And we're having a lot more discussions around the support, if you like, of how to design those validation type projects to gather that data. So, and
if I could just extend that a little bit further, Brian, something we've been discussing a bit, and we know it's a challenge in the agricultural sector too, is beyond project implementation, actually taking the success of an innovation and scaling and adopting it elsewhere in the organisation. So scaling is actually a skill within itself. So if you see this idea, it works here, well, how do we apply it over here? And that's a skill set. And it's a skill set that we don't really focus on. So, and it is actually, I think, problematic in the Australian agricultural sector, in that unfortunately a lot of our great innovations go overseas. Because we're great at getting the funding, doing the R&D, having great ideas, proving they're fantastic, but then we don't know what to do with them. But then therefore they go overseas, or nothing really happens. So there's that skill set that's missing about, all right, we've got it here, that doesn't quite work. Or what if we do it this way, or turn it upside down, or taking what's been proven and actually applying it. And then for an organisation like us, applying it at scale throughout the organisation to make sure we realise the benefits. So collaboration, I think, is important in that, but there's definitely a skill set that I haven't quite managed to define either yet that I think is important there.
Yeah, if you want a definition, it's actually the commercialization piece. So commercialization sounds startup-y, but it's actually the commercial deployment. And scale is the exact word that we were using in a conversation. It was actually with another water utility, Kathryn, but yeah, we were talking about that this morning, that you need a model that can scale. Otherwise, it's only ever going to be this good. You can spend all the resources and you can only get this far. And yeah, it's scaling is a very good word to use in that sort of context. Sorry,
Thank
Chris.
you. No, that's all right. And we're not talking about fishing here. We're talking about something different. We've got loads of questions to get through. This is great conversation. Lots of smiling and nodding from me. The first question, it's come in a couple of times in different forms. How do you foster or encourage collaboration, or how do you upskill your teams to be more collaborative? Does anyone want to take a stab at that one?
I actually think that's something that comes through an organisation's values. It's got to be something that like certainly there are skills you can develop people, but it probably comes back to emotional intelligence, self-awareness, unconscious bias, those sorts of soft skills. But I think to get really good collaboration, at the core, the organisation's got to value it. It's got to say they value it and show they value it and demonstrate they value it. And then it will flow from there. And then it's about doing collaboration properly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think to add to that as well, just the leadership and management are such critical enablers to that very important component. And so having that environment, like you said, Janine, with the values, but having that environment where it's okay to say something that you're doing that's a little bit different without having the fear of it being shot down. Don't start that, and the reason that's so important is because you want to make sure you're not duplicating effort in different parts of the business, so that so you are in an environment where it's safe to say, we're going to try this thing. We think it might work on this. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier as well, in terms of the risk appetite and how to present a change piece to people in that executive and senior leadership level, that they feel comfortable to make a decision on it without having all the information. Because that's really, I think, where innovation has its opportunity to not have too much red tape to go forward with the doing, the idea implementation, but also to have that that comfort in the discomfort of not maybe knowing exactly where it's going to go or how it will be scaled or if it will be scaled. So it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, and probably just adding another thing in with that one, with leadership teams, and again, we've been involved with a lot of leadership training over the years. One of the things that we found really good is when you actually start to explain to leaders how they stuff up the innovation program and what they'd be. And I know that sounds a little bit in your face, but often, you see training where they're trying to teach them how to be innovative, whereas actually with a lot of the leaders, it's more that whole thing, coming back to the word collaboration. Do you realize that if you do this, this, and this, that this is what stops collaboration happening? Some of those things you were talking about, Kathryn, like if you block something straight away, you're looking at that based on your viewpoint and everything. And so if you explain a lot of those things, it often starts to cut through a little bit about, well, we're not saying you don't have to be right all the time. You don't have to be leading all the time. It's sort of encouraging. It's and doing that. The other thing that I think helps with a lot of that is the stage gates and good stage gate processes to sort of help leaders understand that they're not making big bets that could damage their careers and reputations. that it's actually stage gates that gather information. And, you know, all we're asking you to do is to decision about this particular point to gather this bit of information to move to the next stage. And then you can have another decision, or someone else is going to make a decision as to whether it goes to the next stage after we've gathered more factual. You don't have to risk it all, sort of thing, by shutting it down straight away too. It's, yeah.
I think that points, Brian, to another skill set that's not on this slide, which is actually about business writing and persuasion. So the ability to actually prepare business cases and demonstrate anticipated return on investment, that's a skill set that's really important in this space as well. It's to be able to take it from that idea to actually get buy-in and investment and progress it forward. It's that really clear skill set of persuasion and demonstrating the value add.
Well, yeah, and just again, reflecting on the meeting we had this morning, it's recognizing that you can have assumptions and it's okay to have assumptions. You know, what we've seen with a few business cases over the years is that everyone tries to dress it up. It's a little bit like what startups try to do. They dress it up as this thing's going to be amazing and awesome, and then it gets to decision makers and they just call bullshit on it. Whereas it's actually going forward and say, hey, we've got all of these assumptions, but this is what we're going to be doing to test them and to see whether there's something there. If it all works, great opportunity, but we need to test this stuff out because we know there's risks, and being upfront about the risks helps in those business cases too, rather than trust us, it's all going to work and just put $1 million into it. It'll be fine. You know, all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
So we went through a range of things there. Thank you. In terms of collaboration, Janine, I love your point about it being values driven and being able to see an organisation, you know, provide the best environment for collaboration to happen. Obviously, we've got all these tools at our fingertips. A lot of people that we work with are using Bright Idea to foster collaboration when it comes to innovation. Kathryn, that led to you talking about senior managers, and that one of the questions that came through is, what advice do you have for helping senior managers navigate change that's come about from innovation? And Brian, you touched there on, you know, if you have a good stage gate system, that becomes much easier. But Kathryn, I remember you telling me a story about when you go into bat for innovation, you have a way of preparing yourself with an army behind you. Do you want to briefly touch on that?
Yes, and I probably over time may have somewhat changed my little theory on that, but yeah, so I used to really, so I've been involved with the innovation program for almost 6 years now, and I used to really think of it as going forward to the business with like my army behind me of sort of my invisible or sometimes visible support system, but a big team, an army of people to sort of help me and support me in the efforts that us as an organization we're trying to make in terms of being innovative. I think now I don't think the right approach is necessarily to be approaching it with an army, sort of one side having one opinion and the other the other. I think there's a lot to be said for finding a bit of a sandbox to play in. So talking about getting those ideas forward in a way that has a bit more agility and less red tape is uncomfortable for management in some ways. And Brian talked about that quite a bit, the stage gate system and just practical tools to help get around that. But I think having an acceptance that we can both come to the table giving a compromise on either side. And if you want to get some things forward, some idea implementation, and you're getting stopped by the bureaucracy, play the game, find a way to play the game. And once so it's a gentle massage sometimes, and sometimes you do have to go back to the beginning and start the process over again if those key players have changed. But really, yeah, recognizing what they need as well and trying to give them what they need so that we can all be successful.
Yeah, I might just add something on that one because yeah, we see a lot of this, say, with startups in particular, but because of Shark Tanks and this whole pitching competition type thing, there's this whole big push that initiatives get pitched, if you like, to senior executives. And, you know, for years now, when we've been sort of working with startups and they start talking about wanting to pitch to investors, we basically pull them back and say, you don't want to be doing that. It's a one-way conversation. What you want to be doing is to ask them for their advice, ask them for their feedback, what interests them about the business model, how could the business model or the technology, what could change, or what would their recommendations be? Because you can always go and pitch it back to them later on, and you're pitching back what they're suggesting. And we've seen, we sort of started that conversation about 8 years ago. And we've sort of seen now with a lot of, within corporate innovation, that exact thing that you were talking about, Kathryn, don't go in trying to do a pitch. It's actually that whole thing of like, what are their key drivers? Like, what influences them? How do they make their decisions? What are their criteria? And if you understand all of that, it makes it so much easier to craft a business case or craft a discussion type presentation to say, well, we're thinking of this, what do you think? Or, to have that sort of stuff. So it makes it a much easier path.
That really points to the importance of having a strategy that you can hang your hat on too.
Yeah.
So if you've got a clear innovation strategy, and as an organisation, we've done our data analysis, we've done our research, we know these are the important problems that innovation needs to solve, then that's half your battle won.
Yep.
Well, there are so many questions that we won't be able to get through. Thank you, everybody. And I'm due to a technical glitch. I can't add them back through Zoom at the moment, but we will come back to you with some answers. What I will do is throw back to Carissa just for some final thoughts and reflections as we wrap up. So thanks everyone for your questions. We could probably do another hour at least just on those questions, but I'll pass back to Carissa now. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So before we do the final wrap up, I just wanted to move across our panel for any final thoughts, reflections and advice. So Janine, let's start with you.
I think my advice would be, don't get hung up on innovation, the word. I mean, what we're talking about is finding new ways of doing things and solving organisational problems and known priorities. So to me, it's don't get hung up on your very strict methodologies or your processes, but it's about moving in the right direction and having a broader focus on where you're heading, and then obviously using your data and so on to refine it, but call it whatever it needs to be called to suit the audience at the time. So I think that helps with the fluidity a bit too, because innovation ultimately is that effective innovation is that balance between having solid systems that make sure we're innovating in the right areas and doing it efficiently, plus the fluidity and flexibility to go where we need to go, where the opportunities are. And that's the biggest challenge in innovation. So sometimes I think, forget about the I word.
Awesome. And Kathryn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great final piece of advice. And I think it doesn't have to be a formal thing. Innovation activities or finding new ways of doing things better are happening all the time, and they should be celebrated. So I think the celebration component is a really big one, but I think the biggest one for me is finding those enablers, those people generating that bit of a groundswell and getting that power behind the people conversations, the thinking, the talking, because I think that really can lead to some pretty spectacular doing.
Yeah, awesome. And Brian, any final thoughts from you?
Just picking up on that last word that Kathryn said, the doing. I think sustainable innovation programs all come back down to actually getting value back into the organisation. So it's sort of, the right ideas being implemented that drive value, whatever that value, that definition of value is to the organization. That doesn't just have to be monetary. It could be, you know, more around the people and culture side or whatever. But if it's defined, it's a lot easier to sort of make sure that the initiatives are delivering that value. And I think linked with that, and sort of through, you know, some of the discussions we've been having, is sort of looking at the breadth of skills that are needed. And, you know, we've seen again over the years a lot of focus on the front end, if you like, of the innovation system, if you like, or journey, that, you know, the ideation, the people being able to submit ideas and things like that. But, you know, through some of the conversations we've been having today, it's also about, well, yeah, the insights, the how to validate, how to, you know, get a business case put together and get it agreed and accepted, but then implement a business case as well. You know, the uncertainty around all of that when you know, then going through a process of further validation and those sorts of bits and pieces. And I think the more innovation systems or teams that focus on those, that's because unless you get those together, you can't get the outcomes. You can't get the stuff being implemented within the organization. Or I shouldn't say you can't, it's more difficult to do that. And so I think that's a trend that we're seeing with a lot of innovation systems now, and with innovation teams, is looking at that. How do we get the value piece? Because everyone wants sustainable innovation, and that's the only way we can keep boards and senior executives supporting the innovation program if they're generating value for the business. Otherwise, they're a cost center to the business. So.
And speaking of value, our next lab event is all about how you define, track and evaluate innovation value. So that one is early December. So for anyone interested, I will send around the link in the post email. Good segue there, Brian.
Well, I should say I actually forgot all about that and was going off the conversation that Janine and Kathryn had started. But hey, look, I'll take it. Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. So finally, as a token of our appreciation, Janine and Kathryn, Impact Innovation is going to make a $100 donation to a charity of your choice. So who would you like to support today? Janine, I'll start with you.
Thank you. First of all, I think it's a very generous thing to do. Thank you so much to Impact Innovation, and I'd like it to go to Wildlife Victoria. They're a not-for-profit organisation, did a lot during the bushfires. They basically help carers look after injured wildlife and animals. And of course, I'm sure we're all seeing all the footage at the moment of the animals in the floods, and this is just going to be part of the course moving forward, unfortunately. So the more we can support those carers, the better off our lovely little furry animals will be. So thank you.
Definitely beautiful. And Kathryn?
Thank you so much for the generosity. UnityWater is a big supporter of White Ribbon Australia, a global social movement working to eliminate gendered violence. So we thank you for your support.
Beautiful. Not a problem. So finally, just do a quick wrap up. So our next ISO Innovation Management System Standards training course is coming up next month. So for anyone interested, we'll send around a link for you to register, but it's an excellent course for anyone interested in aligning your innovation efforts to the world's best practice. And Kathryn and Janine, just quickly, you've both done this course. Is this something you'd recommend to other people?
Absolutely, and every bit. What I would really recommend is it's a great format. It's a relatively small group, interactive, virtual format, and that's how I met Kathryn. And I think the dialogue and discussions with the group and the collaboration was, in the context of the ISO, was just as important and valuable as the learning and the knowledge we gained as well. So definitely would recommend that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kathryn?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my experience through Impact Innovation and gaining some of that knowledge that I know Brian participated in the creation of those ISO standards as well. I think it provided a lot of clarity, and it helped to change my thinking about really coming to the table and participating, giving them what they need so that we can continue to move forward. It's just a great tool on how to build an effective innovation management system within an organization, any organization, making sure that you've got that commitment, the vision, the strategy, developing policy and so on, so that you can have, so that you can be set up for success.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much, guys. So we'll send around a short survey after we wrap up here, and it takes a few minutes to fill out. And we send these out so we can make these sessions the best they can be for all of you guys online today. And yeah, thanks again to Kathryn and Janine for offering up their time. Thank you. To come and share their insights, and thanks also to our wonderful IIG team, Brian and Chris, for their time and efforts today. But that's it. Thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see you all at the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Alrighty. Thanks. Bye.